So thank you very much. Thank you everybody for joining. Um, so I'm just gonna do us some quick overviews, and then I'll hand it off to Uba to walk us through the scenario. And the goal here is to wrap that scenario up by basically the meeting next week. So we have plenty of time to create sample data and get everything going. So let me share my screen. All right. So we are looking to the Connectathon is July 15th to 17th. You can get access to all of the Connectathon information at the link there or the QR code down in the lower right-hand corner. You can ask general questions about this event at CMS Interoperability, and you can get logistical questions answered by Sandy Vance. Sandy's run many of these connectathons, both HL7 and CMS connectathons, and she's a great resource. So feel free to reach out to her. This is a free event, so which is it's the only free event connectathon during the year. So there's no charge to attend or participate. The registration opens May 13th, so you can't do it yet, but it closes on June 30th, so a good amount of time to register. And you do that at the link above or at the QR code. The agenda is presentations on policy and technologies on the first day. So the second day is dedicated to testing and demos, and the third day is for presenting track highlights. So, and that's another great thing about this event is that we get to show off to everybody what we've done, as opposed to putting it into a report out, which may or may not ever be read. So it's a good way to show what we've done. Um, so we'll have two PACIO tracks, the advanced actually healthcare directive interoperability. I need to change that. Transitions of care, which can include personal functioning engagement and standardized medication profile. What we've done is we've decided to do each track as lasting 4 hours. So this is more of a demonstration than an actual sort of connecting thing. So there'll be one track in the morning, one track in the afternoon. And the idea here is to really get things all set before we get there. We'll have a kickoff and overview for an hour. There's an hour for testing, which is really just to make sure that we've got everything set up and everything's ready to go. 1 hour for a demonstration, and then 1 hour for answering any questions that folks may have. And so, this is a great way to let people know at CMS what we're doing. So that's going to be the primary audience. There's going to be CMS folks visiting all the tracks. CMS does support this project, so this is a great way to show that they're getting their money's worth and that we're doing some cool things, which we are. These are the links to the various tracks proposals, and so I encourage you to go and visit those if you haven't already. And the scenario plan, which Uba will go into far more detail, is really to basically share the scenario across both tracks. And we're basing this off of the Connectathon back in September 2024. So we're moving back to Betsy Smith Johnson, who suffers a stroke. And we're going to work out the scenario in whole. So we're not going to work out for each track. We're going to be working on the scenario for the whole day, and then we will break those things, the appropriate elements out into each of the tracks. So that's the idea. So the idea here is we're going to show continuity. So of how these things kind of fit together and how they can work together to provide a comprehensive plan. So it's kind of like it's a little bit like we're doing an integration track, but we're actually not. The scenario is integrated, but we're going to be showing different things at different times and for the different tracks. Uh, the timeline that we're looking to do is, again, as I mentioned, we'd like to wrap up the scenario this time next week, and then have a sample data complete draft. Not perfect, perhaps, but at least complete by June 5th. That will give implementers time to start really kind of playing with the data, freezing that data on June 19th, a couple of weeks later, then doing two dry runs because we're not going to have time to really iron out, significant problems at the Connectathon. So we will do a dry run on June 26th. And then, of course, there's the July 4th holiday. We will then do a second demo dry run on July 10th. And then July 16th is the day that the show goes on. So that's kind of the overall timeline. Any questions or concerns, recommendations, anything?
Um, I think we were going to move the date to May 16th, Dave.
Okay. Well,
Remember, I've got that ONC thing on the 15th.
okay. Yep, we can do that. So we'll change that to the 16th. Uh,
Otherwise, I'll just run late. That's fine too, but
yeah, no, let's make it 16th.
Dave, do
So
you want me to attend and sign up? I don't know.
for the Connectathon?
Mhm. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
follow the PACIO? Okay.
Yeah.
Can I
Um,
ask a clarifying question?
sure.
For that scenario frozen date, what do you need from participants in it, like that is beyond what we've already kind of sort of discussed as part of coming up with the track proposal?
So the main thing is, things like that are important for everything to fit together, like the dates things are happening, what's happening in the scenario, um, and things like that. So it's more than just, okay, in scene one, this happens, this happens, this happens. It gets more like, okay, this happens at this point. We want to build a timeline. We want to be able to make sure we understand what data needs to be exchanged and things like that to support the scenario. That way, then we can take that information, we can, have sample data created with the appropriate dates, with the appropriate data that needs to be exchanged. And that way it prepares the implementers to be able to test and try things out.
So Jessica, refer back to May's presentation last week, and there are 5 steps, right? The frozen date is the first and second steps, and just nail down the story and also the storyline with the dates, specific dates. Then the technical team can start creating the actual sample data.
Sure. Yeah, so that's no problem. We're absolutely able to kind of, you know, provide a little more detail in the scene kind of that we already composed. I did want to kind of clarify and discuss a little bit in terms of the sample data for what we are testing. We were planning on generating ourselves, and we can, work with your team to make sure that it fits the format and the requirements so that it is in alignment with everything else that we're doing. But we just thought because it is actually, testing a new kind of data that is not something at all that exists anywhere in Betsy's profile. It is brand new. It is actually data about, Charles, her caregiver, that, we can take on creating the sample data for that piece.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason why I think it's important to have the timeline set up and all of that, because we've got really at least three folks that are going to be creating sample data.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure that all of that remains in alignment and that we're all marching to the same drum beat. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah. Any other questions or thoughts?
I guess one logistical question related to anyone who's creating sample data. Um, for all the, I guess, external participants creating their own sample data, will they create it in Fish and push it to the new repo that May created? I mean, that would definitely be my recommendation.
Yeah, I
So,
wouldn't recommend that because some of them are
yep.
done dynamically.
Yeah, so I
All
think
right.
I'm not necessarily may correct me if I'm misstating, but it's not necessary for people to necessarily learn fish. But if we can provide, the sample data in some, we can take the sample data either in, spreadsheet form, JSON form, and then we can try to convert that over to fish. where
Yeah,
that
I think our data is in JSON form, if I
okay.
understand correctly.
So, we can convert that easily over to fish. And so we can then make sure that we have all of the data in a repository that we can all refer to.
Yeah, we don't have to do that. They can coexist if you have it as static data. I think what matters more is that there's a tracking first that happens because, again, we don't necessarily want, as an example, my directors does not need to have, canned data. They have, an application that also dynamically generates it. So
Mhm.
if you have that tracked, right, as an inventory, then we know what we need to have that's pre-made and which ones we would expect to push a storyline that would be real time. Right. So, but to your point, Dave, they can coexist. So, Jessica, if you hand that as JSON, we have two ways of doing it. We, can set up that code IG so that it can coexist, but we can also do a very easy migration to Fire shorthand. We can do that on our side.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts?
One more as well. Um, I would recommend, if that's okay, that you validate any JSONs that you create. Because one of the lessons learned here before was that sometimes there were some discrepancies in the JSON data, and we'd prefer that we not make changes, but instead work together to let you know, hey, this validation didn't quite work. We could find out that we're doing testing early, right? Because maybe there was something that was, needed to change on your side.
I just want to add here, May, and thank you for working with us on that after the last round in terms of making sure that our fire returns, our structured fire returns from the medrec process are validated.
Mhm.
So I just want to throw another strong voice on that because we all charged a little bit on that in the last few
Yeah.
rounds.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks a lot,
Yeah,
Emery. I
that
hope
was
we're
why I was
making-
asking, because
Yeah.
obviously, May, as you pointed out, that's one of the advantages you get if you start and fish and run it through the IG publisher is you get, the kind of validation that you don't if you're editing JSON directly.
Yeah, and I even just want to appeal that anybody who wants to be on the early side of that timeline, because I think for the data, because I think I don't see if Nancy's on the call, but I know that was the impact of the data work was really make or break for her too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And given that we integrated most closely with her in the last few rounds, I just want to make a shout out because that's the thing that kind of puts all the pressure on this as we get
Yeah.
closer and closer to showtime.
Right.
Agreed. And I
Thanks, and well
also,
said, May.
oh yeah, of course. No, thanks, Limer, and looking forward to this next round as well to be involved as early as possible. I would just add that we don't have to force the IG publisher, that there are validation tools that are available that you can even embed it within your own system if you wanted. And there's also the online Fire Validator if you just wanted to do one at a time as opposed to a batch validation. The IG publisher code inside actually calls this Fire Validator code, just as a quick FYI. So if anyone has questions on that, please feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to point you to those resources.
Yeah, and we are going to be using a new sample data mechanism. So May did a presentation on that last week. So check out the recording from last week. All right. With that, I will pass it off to Uba to walk us through some of the scenario details.
Thank you. Yeah, and so this I'll be going over the content that I sent last night. If you didn't get the Word document with the scenario overview, please let me know in the chat and I can forward it to you. And so the idea here is that that we will this is an overall scenario that will sorry that will uh help with having the two tracks work together. And those two tracks are the ADI and the TOC.
tracks. And what this basic scenario is doing is it is giving an overview that the two tracks, the leads of the two tracks take, and then used to work on their own track scenarios. So this isn't supposed to be the scenario that like ends up being like published online. This is the guide for the two different tracks to use for developing and refining their track scenarios. And so the scenario that we'll be going over here today, it's been developed over the past few days with help from the ADI leadership, including Maria and May, and also with guidance from with Dave and Yolanda, and then also from a discussion with the PFE community yesterday, where we fleshed out some of the key points, and hopefully this is a good starting point for everybody. So we've had input from multiple different communities on this, and I thank everybody who's already given insights in this. And so we're at a stage now where we have a little bit more of an idea of what can go on during this in this scenario, but we definitely are still in a place today to provide feedback. So as Dave said, we're using Betsy Smith Johnson from 2024, and she's over 65 years old, and so that she's Medicare eligible. She has the same medical history. The only difference between this Connectathon and September Connectathon is that the breast cancer diagnosis is in the background. It's not a driving force for the scenario. So we're calling it that it's in remission here, but and a part of her history, but not necessarily driving her care. And then she also has depression and bipolar 1 disorder. So thanks to help from in discussion with Maria and Lisa with the ADI leadership call earlier this week, we came up with this very high level scenario that Betsy has a stroke. Her son Charles calls the ambulance to get her to the emergency department. She's admitted to the ED. Then once she's stable there, she's discharged to SNF for rehab. When she's stable there, she's discharged to her home for home health. And then after a period of time, she has a checkup with her primary care provider where Charles takes her. And this is a point where Charles is assessed for caregiver burden. This is what Jessica had mentioned earlier about that assessment with Charles. Any questions at this point about the overall persona and scenario?
Did you see my note in the chat?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I guess I'm a little confused. So we're integrating the ADI and the TOC tracks. I thought originally the caregiver burden assessment was going to be part of the TOC track. I mean, it can be either. I don't think it really actually matters. But
yeah. So so this is an overall scenario that both TOC and ADI use.
Okay.
So you guys can mold it however you want specifically, but the idea here is this is the overall unified scenario that then you all take and make work for you. So yeah, awesome. And then yeah, thank you, Maria, for your changes to the narrative. That is totally fine, and that's it's great that you've been able to weave in ADI content. You can go ahead and keep reviewing on your work. The idea is that you take this overall scenario and run with it. This is just meant to be like the overall like umbrella that both tracks use. Is that okay,
Yeah.
Maria?
No, it's fine. I'm also revising some of the language.
Mhm.
It was a little informal and
Okay.
has some references we don't use in SNF.
Okay.
I've worked in long-term post-acute care for 40 years. I am
Mhm.
pretty sure that any changes I'm making to support the TOC are appropriate as well.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
great.
not changing the data, I'm smoothing the language.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I guess
Um,
the question is, do we want the Maria to modify your version if you want, and you can grant Maria the access to your Google Sheet, or do
Oh
you want?
no. Oh no. Oh no.
You don't want the access? Oh,
No,
that's
I'm making a change on a local copy and I'll send it to you
okay.
guys.
yeah,
That's fine as
I'm not
well.
logging into Box
yeah.
Oh,
When
this is not Box, it's a Google Sheet.
still.
if I may on this one, so one of the things, this is obviously one that's very interesting to us because of the whole med racket transitions of care. So when you're done with that, Maria, as soon as you've
Yep.
got that, I want to run this by our clinical leads with actual meds on the medication profiles and risks so that we can define and inject some specific action items relevant to risk in the medication regimen so that
Oh,
we're
I think
really
that's
seeing
huge.
game changer on the
Huge.
med rec referrals
Yeah.
in and out. Because, here's the thing with this next round, last time we were sending back not only a monolithic sort of summary document through the Fire interface, but also a structured medication list that was a reconciled list. This one, we want to be sending structured action plans. It can go to multiple players, not payers, or maybe payers, in the care team. So I'd like to have some really pretty meaty action plans.
Hmm.
So as soon as you've got that, if there's a way for me to get notification, I'd like to do a breakout with my clinical team and come up with some meaty content in that regard to that input. So a
I think
question for you
that's,
is timeline of when you think you're going to have that set, because these guys are tightly scheduled right now,
yeah.
and then to have that ready before next week's session.
No, I think that's really key. I can see the focus on physical functioning and engagement. I don't see a lot of anecdotal information inside the narrative to act as a catalyst to really exploring that medication reconciliation.
Well,
So
I
I can
think let's
smooth
throw in
out.
in
I
the
think it was
initial.
left out. Yeah. So I will need to get that to you so you can sprinkle those breadcrumbs throughout it. At least I'll get you a cleaned up version to work
Yeah, because
from.
I think if we can inject some, relatively subtle but meaningful risk at the
Hmm.
outset, then we have a path to demonstrating, capture resolution and, path to outcomes improvement as a result of that. So I'd
Yep.
really like to get us into that early and define it and help define that data set around the meds and specifically the action items.
Boy, I think that's really key. I'm not seeing anything in
So,
the narrative
Mhm.
about
yeah.
medication, and we know
Yeah, there's some
it's
glancing
it's a
references to,
Mhm.
problem.
the
Yeah.
structured medication, but I think that's
Okay.
something we want to flush out.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was intentional that we didn't put out all the information in there because the idea is to hand off this overall scenario for TOC
Hmm.
and ADI to you do your magic. And so we didn't want to dictate any of that. We just wanted to have the overall structure of what's happening to Betsy so that you all can go ahead and make the scenarios work for you guys. So no
Sweet.
worries at
Thank you.
all. Please, yeah, go ahead and yeah, do what you want.
I guess my question to May and Dave is like, are we envisioning using this version as like in both track, or we are diverging from here? It's like it seems to me multiple parties have different inputs for their scenario in order to fit their scenario, like a TOC, the MAT reconciliation. Maybe Jessica also want to add some additional information for the scene five for Charles to begin the caregiver burden.
I
Yeah.
think it's a lot easier to work on one scenario and get that
Hmm.
right as opposed to doing it separately because then, there may be inconsistencies.
Mhm.
So
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 in that case, I'm proposing everyone working on the same version instead of like a merge and diverge waiting for other people's version. So this is a Google Doc. Maria, this is not Box. And Uba can give you everyone access to add it. And people can just add, change whatever, add your own content for different scenario.
I
Um,
appreciate that. I've been working on this for an hour. I'll send it to you guys when I'm done, and y'all can put it onto Google Docs because I've got to move on to something else.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great plan. Awesome. Any other questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, the recommendation is if you're using Google Docs, one we have to change, and you want to edit it, you have to change the permissions. But if you are going to be editing, please, there's a setting that you can change it to suggesting, and that way, if there is something that was edited that someone else, right, thought they had, then at least it's visible as to who changed it. It's almost like track changes in Word.
Mhm. Great, thank you, May. So I guess Maria, since you've made substantial changes to what the scenario is right now, should we share your document then instead of the one that I have? That's from yesterday.
That's fine. I'm cool with that.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me make one last change here.
No worries.
Do-do-do-do. Um, yeah, and I can.
If you want it, you can either share it yourself or you can email it
Yeah.
to me and I can share it.
No, I don't mind sharing it. You guys can look at it and be like, "Oh my God, what is the matter with her?" I'm fine with that.
It's all good.
I don't mind a bit. Okay, let me. And Anne Marie, you are going to see a deficit in information related to the medication, but I think we've seeded the scenario to where, there's a lot of open doors. So
Mhm.
let me move this off to the side. Can y'all see the sheet? Is it big enough? Like I've got three screens here and I never know which screen to kind of work on.
Yeah, it looks good.
You can see it? Okay.
Mhm.
So the first thing I did is I put in a little bit of the background, and I was clear down in scene three when I realized I needed to augment the background. Everything in the background. I'll clean this up for you guys, but what I'm trying to do is put change words in red and things that need to be omitted in yellow. But anyway, I'll clean that all up. So in the background, she has a personal advanced care plan. Oh, close your parentheses, Miss OCD, and a mental health advanced directive, MHAD, from 2024. She has shared them with her son Charles, um, who is also her healthcare agent with whom she lives to ensure he can speak for her as she is unable to do so at a future potential health event. I'm trying to pull it back into the story that you guys were working on. She has a fall in the home in 2025, and after being discharged from the ED, she spends a few weeks in a SNF receiving therapy and rehab so she can return home to her son and daughter-in-law. During that SNF stay, the practitioner creates a portable medical order to support her treatment preferences and goals of care as appropriate for that jurisdiction and care setting. That's what they do in SNF. So that at least gives us the background that we've got a PACP, an MHAD, and a PMO. Because when I was in scene one, I'm like, uh-oh, she's got documents and we better describe why they were built. Everybody okay with that so far?
Yes.
Reasonable? And you could add medication information
Yep,
like
will do.
crazy. I was trying to hold to the scenarios.
Yeah, no, that's good. We'll do.
Okay, cool. So scene number one. Betsy is, and if this background is not viable for transitions of care, I can specifically, call out that the background is ADI only. Um, and then you guys can see what works for you and what doesn't. It's really hard to kind of weave, you know, jumps in time and all kinds of things. So this is a work in progress. Betsy has been at home for 2 weeks. She does not live alone. She lives with her son Charles and his wife Lisa. So, get that updated. After being discharged from a sniff for a fall she had, because remember, it was here. And one afternoon, Betsy's son Charles finds her sitting on the floor and believes she has had another fall. When he gets her up and seated in a chair, he notices that she is disoriented, weak, and is exhibiting slurred speech. He fears she might have had a stroke, so he calls 911 to transport her to the nearest ED. Okay. Betsy arrives at the ED via ambulance, with Charles following in his car. During admission to the ED, her portable medical order is accessed from the EHR to inform the care and treatment Betsy receives. After assessments, labs, and imaging, she's diagnosed with an ischemic stroke. Symptoms that are documented are aphasia, weakness, numbness in right arm, trouble understanding. I think that would be a cognitive issue, but y'all are, better at this than I. And balance issues. They give Betsy TPA and reassess. She stays in the ED overnight for observation. Charles returns home to sleep. The following morning, she is assessed, from which the conclusion is made that Betsy has improved to the point where the decision, I'll take out is made, to transfer her to a SNF in the referral network. Note, patient can stay in the ER for up to 72 hours as per Medicare coverage regs. Betsy still has days in her benefit period and is within the 30-day window of being able to be readmitted to a SNF without a qualifying hospital stay. Charles accompanies Betsy from the ED to the SNF as she transitions, I want to weave in the word transitions of care, her care from one site to the next. Betsy is admitted to the SNF in the afternoon, less than 24 hours after having been admitted to the ED. Charles helps the SNF team get her settled in her room after receiving the ED discharge data, her PACP, Mental Health Advance Directive, and PMO, and completing her admission assessments. And here's where I think we can weave in a lot of medication data. The SNF team develops a care plan that reflects her treatment preferences, care experience preferences, and integrates the services and support she needs to be able to discharge to home safely, such as SLP, PT, and OT. I'm just still trying to clean this up a little bit. Due to medical need, Betsy stays at the SNF for 30 days following her discharge from the ED. During the current SNF stay, she and the medical oversight practitioner elect to update her portable medical order to include a new preference or prohibition that, I'll just take out new preference, that includes a prohibition against future avoidable hospitalizations. And that's as far as I got. So we've got the last little bit of scene 3 and scene 4 and 5 to work through. How does it feel so far?
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for all those updates.
Yep. Now I know Anne Marie needs to weave in medication. We've got to run it past PFE, see if I hashed up the therapy. I know what the processes are. And I put in the note, I really haven't done a lot of work in the subsequent columns. I thought if we got the narrative straightened out, the next few columns would just sort of flow.
Yeah,
Does
exactly.
anybody see any challenges with what I've reflected? I mean, Anne Marie, I clearly have not woven in the medication, but does anybody else see anything that needs to be in? Because I'll just finish smoothing out this and the language and the transfer of care scenarios, and then I'll send it on up.
Yeah, and then just make sure somebody hits me to so I can find it, and then we'll take it and run with the next round. And I'll
Cool.
begin queuing up my my consulting clinical pharmacy backbench to sink
Yep.
their teeth into it.
Should be able to have it there in a few hours. It's Thursdays are busy call days, but I should be able to have it there in a couple of hours.
Much appreciated.
That's
Yep, you
great.
bet.
So for the scenes that you've gone through so far, Maria, where there's the background information, Betsy's admitted to the ED, and then transitions to the SNF. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments so far about how the scenario is going, and any suggested updates?
Yeah. What did I leave out? Anybody see anything that I'm trying to keep the substance there for TOC? I know I can see what they did, but we just need some language changes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Is the overall scenario going okay so far? Okay. So,
Anyone not think it's going well?
Anybody just disgusted?
All right, not hearing anything. So
No, I just have one question. Do we have Betsy in agreement with Charles's decision? I mean, I guess since she gave him proxy, but I don't know if that's an extra.
That should have been provided for here, here, and depending on which version we use, it could be further reinforced here.
Okay, and then do we have, I know we've been talking a lot in the ADI calls about provider signage. Do we want to throw a monkey wrench in here and make it so that a advanced care practitioner
Yeah,
signed it instead of a attending physician?
Well, there's no attending in a SNF.
yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Correct.
I was
That's
gonna
why I put
ask,
SNF practitioner.
I was gonna ask afterwards. There's the notion of the integrated story, but I also want to make sure that um Maria, in terms of the scope, that you wanted to, yeah, we could have one story, but the focus of the ADI, very specific pieces, may be inside the ADI track, right? So I mean, let's
Right.
keep going with this piece, but there could be another incarnation where it was almost like the way it looked before Uber, where you had a more high-level message, and then underneath it was the detailed ADI track that fits underneath it. So that you're able to, separate out the TOC just enough to have some ADI content without having all those, really valuable details that would be in the ADI track itself. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, you're going to end up repeating everything that we had in the ADI track, including all the details inside the TOC track. Then it'll be like January.
Right, but okay, yeah, because TOC will go first
Yeah.
and they won't really focus on the
so
ADI. But if it's visible, they're going to be like, yeah, we got one of those and one of those. We'll talk
Yeah,
about that
you could just say,
later.
yeah, we just have one of those. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the specifics in each of so when we work through this one scenario, then that drives what we want to put in the actual updating the track proposals that are specific to TOC and ADI.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, let's just keep this now because this feels like this is the overall story and this is super important. So I apologize if I'm disrupting on this. I just want to make sure that we know what our next steps after that. And, there will be a variation, like a subset, right? Like a deeper subset that derives from this. So, but not all the super details inside the first story in the end of at the end of the incarnation. You don't want to be going through, oh, and then she has specific permits and denies, right? When you show when you show the PMO, Maria, that would be something in the ADI track.
Right.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. And never mind.
Yep. And the only reason I put this here is I want to give a nod to USCDI. So that care plan that reflects her treatment preferences, her care experience preferences, her goals of care, and it integrates the services and support she needs in order to be able to discharge home. That's some of this comes from ADI. Some of this is just sniff business. We don't want to hold on to them forever. We want to get them in, get them stable, restore as much functionality as we can, and move them to the next appropriate site of care.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful. And so then ADI is mostly involved in those first few those first steps.
Oh, it's
And
woven throughout here.
oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
And then um, after she is after her time at the SNF, then she's discharged at home. And even though you haven't provided content yet, we can keep going to go through the rest of the scene if anyone the rest of the scenes in case anyone else has any feedback about the overall scenario. So if you'd like, I can go back to sharing my screen uh, if that's easier for you.
Yeah, that's fine. However you want to do it is fine. Yep,
Okay.
we can probably pick up on scene 4.
Okay, perfect. So then, here we go. So then in scene 4, which we have right here, so she arrives at home and is and the home health team has developed a care plan, and they're going to provide Betsy with therapies, including OT, PT, SLP to support lingering symptoms. And
Hey,
the
Uba, is it possible to zoom in a little
oh
bit? This
yes,
is like itty bitty on my screen.
yeah. Here, actually, let me see if I can. I'm just going to use the Word
Better
doc.
get your bifocals out, Mama.
I don't even need bifocals yet, but I am on a laptop, and that is itty bitty.
Like Rebecca at Sunnybrook Farms today.
Go. Let's try the Word document. That'll probably be easier. Okay. Excuse the uh, scrolling here. Okay. So, so Betsy's at home, and she's going to receive care or support from OT, PT, SLP, and anything else. This is where the transitions of care team can expand on this and make any changes they want. Um, or updates to this that they want. Um, and they also give Charles caregiver training for the things that home health isn't providing. And then they also give Charles a list of community resources to help him and Betsy. And some of the things that the PFE group thought could be part of the care that home health provides. And again, TOC folks, you can update, change this, is mobility and basic ADLs, lingering communications issues, and getting adequate nutrition. And they also order a device for her. This is, we didn't specify it. The TOC can decide this. And some examples that the PFE group gave are, maybe a dressing stick, raised toilet seat, fall detector. And then that the home health team notices that Charles is having to help Betsy with her medication management, and he himself is running into issues like having to go pick up and order medications. There's seemingly duplicate medications that potentially could be due to auto refills from the pharmacy that doesn't have an up-to-date reconciled medication list. Anne Marie, you can mold this however you want, but we thought this could be a good potential for um, SMP and med related data to be really highlighted here.
Yep, this is a good one for us as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and from Charles's perspective, I can add some language about how this is very time consuming and burdensome and stressful for him to try to be keeping track of this, the
Oh,
medication
perfect.
component by himself.
Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. So then we move on to the last scene where it's been, let's see, where we have it's 2 weeks, and this could this is the proposed timeline for 2 weeks after arriving home, but we could adjust it if needed if it's easier for TOC. So she has a checkup with her primary care provider. Um, and Charles takes her to the clinic and is there to support her during the appointment. And during that appointment, the the primary care provider notices that Charles appears to be stressed out and burned out from taking on so much to care for his mom. And then this is the opportunity, Jessica, where the primary care provider could ask Charles if it's okay if he is assessed for caregiver burden. And the PFE group came up with a list of things that could potentially be impacting his ability to manage his mom's care. And this includes a mismatch between him and his mom about what is safe for her to do and not to do, stress about the mother-son relationship with the help she needs, like does she need bathroom help? Is that like being the son, you know, causing some friction there? Um, Worry about her vulnerability of being taken advantage of, um, the work of her, if she's going to have a modified diet, that was one thing that the PFE group talked about. Um, that could be a lot of work, doing errands for her. He could lack the resources, like the finances, to be able to manage all this. And their resources in the community could be lacking. Um, and taking her to appointments can cause conflicts for work, because he goes to the appointments with her. So again, Jessica, you could mold this to make it work for you. These were some ideas that the PFE community had.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure we can also say something about, it's putting some strain on his marriage. And is there another paragraph under this?
That's it.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So in addition, because this is the CMS Connectathon and we want to kind of tie it back, we would want to add, and this was in the track proposal language. I can pull that out. Is it okay to assess him for this? But also, it is because there are CMS programs that he might qualify for, based on the results of that assessment to help with her, to help with the financing some of the additional resources.
Yeah, I do want to take out the phrase that worry about her vulnerability because
Okay.
in the story, that's her son. She moved in with them. Sure, there's other concerns that we can highlight when it comes to clinician burden, but I would not want to inject that because he is designated to be her healthcare agent. So we can't have worries about vulnerability. That's contraindicative.
Okay, perfect.
When you say vulnerability, exactly are we referencing?
Well, I can say when we put that in, she was living by herself. So, phone calls from people extracting money. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of vulnerability to being taken advantage of by her son, but when she was living
Yes.
alone, being vulnerable to outside influences that he's not there to oversee.
Yeah, and I had to strike that because she lives with him.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was my intention, thinking that she lives alone, and that's a big issue.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think because, kind of part of our point of what we want to do is demonstrate the utility of, engaging a Smart on Fire app for the assessment. I think I can also clarify our idea is kind of that it would be more not that the clinician, like the PCP, is assessing Charles like in the office with Betsy at that time, but more that they are providing kind of the information about how to access the assessment, and it is a patient, or it's I guess a caregiver reported assessment, not, which is different. Does that make sense? Different than like the PAC assessments that are performed by the provider.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And, all those details definitely, like, especially since you all have already drafts of your scenarios, that you can use this to help update that. This is just meant to be, the overview, that so that we're all on the same page. And this is a jumping board for you all to go and run off with, and make do to make fit with your needs. So definitely, it's all, pass it off to you to make it work for you. So in terms of the overall scenario where we have this situation where Betsy has this goes from home to the emergency department to SNF to home health, and then this caregiver assessment. Does this overall scenario work for you for your needs, specifically for advanced healthcare and mental health directives, and for transitions of care, including medication-related data?
I think the answer is no, not yet,
Yeah.
but we're working on it.
Yep. Okay. Great. Yeah. And in terms of working on it, Maria, is it that the overall scenario still needs work, or is it that you're taking this overall scenario and making it work specifically for your track?
I'm trying to make it work for both tracks, at least to provide a real basic shell
Okay.
that the other focus points
Hmm.
can just insert their data into.
Okay.
Because my problem is I got a bunch of developers that think that they're going to be off for Memorial Day and 4th of July, so I've got to start queuing them up early. I don't know who approved PTO this summer, but it wasn't me.
Yeah, and Uba, again, with I can add some clarifying language, but just to be clear, one of the like key kind of data transmission pathways that we will be looking to test is also sending that information to CMS to, you know, determine eligibility, and receiving back to the PCP the notification of the decision,
Hmm.
the eligibility decision.
Got it.
Hey, Brittany, I see you're joined us. What do you think from this scenario? I don't know what you've seen, but is this something you think you might want to participate in?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome.
So far.
Excellent. That's awesome.
Wonderful. Well, I guess in the last few minutes we have, Dave, what would you like to do?
Well, I think my thinking is that we'll incorporate Maria's changes into the Google Doc. I think we should try to work from the Google Doc going forward. Um, Hopefully everybody will have access to it and it'll be easier than Box. Um, Generally, I found Google Docs to be better than that respect. And then I think, we can make changes to it. I think that in using May's suggestion for using suggestion, so that we can get have some tracking. I think it would be good for everyone to sort of keep tabs on it, so that when things do change, that it doesn't mess up other what other folks are doing, and to raise those issues as quickly as possible so that we can then make sure we address those and come out with something that's cohesive and works for everybody. Um, and then at that point, once we take that and once we get it all solidified, hopefully by Friday of next week, then we can update the track proposals to reflect the story with the specifics of those tracks. And then, and in parallel, the sample data can be created by all of the folks that need to do that. Does that make sense?
And for the track leads for both tracks, if you need some support for bridging work between the two tracks, or any support within your own track, I'm here to help, and I'm going to be the manager for the overall scenario for the Connectathon. So my job here is to facilitate anything you all need, and to help bridge and do whatever it needs to do to make it as easy as possible for you all in terms of the scenario.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Uba.
the only other thing I would say is that, in the real world, things get really, really complex really quickly. And so I just want to make sure we don't overcomplicate this. We want to test the things we want to test. So just keep that in mind. I mean, we want it to be as accurate as possible, but it is it's a model, it's a simulation, and by definition, it's not going to be correct or perfect. So just keep that in mind.
So Brittany, it's great you will be participating. Are you anticipating a participating both track or TOC or ADI as well?
Pretty sure just the ADI track, but I can
Okay,
ask the team if there's any interest in the transition of care track as well.
great.
Yeah, and Britt, I can fill you in on this kind of after the fact. We're going to use one basic narrative scenario,
Mhm.
and when we do the transition of care review overview, we'll focus on those aspects, less on, oh yeah, there's some other documents out here. Then when we switch gears, it's going to be the same story, it's going to be the same narrative, but we will amplify the ADI components that we really just short of mentioned and said more on that later during the transition of care. So we're going to try to keep it all the same, but we'll shine a spotlight on really key aspects during the transition of care. And then we'll shine a different spotlight on the same story for ADI. And I think that will really help participants and MITRE have like a single data set. And we're just looking at different parts of it throughout the story.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, honey. All right, it's top of the hour. Gotta roll.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Couldn't do it without you.
Thanks,
I really
guys.
appreciate that.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank
You.
you.
See you next